Hi guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Serena and I am your go-to guide for all things sensitive. Welcome back to another episode. We are going to be talking today about 5 ways to tell if you are an HSP or highly sensitive person. So if you haven't already, definitely watch my other video, which is all about 3 things that you need to know about HSPs. So that video will also help give you a background on highly sensitive people. So today we're going to talk about 5 ways that you can know if you're an HSP. And these are 5 of the most common. However, there are tons of ways that you can find out if you're an HSP or a highly sensitive person, okay? So, and when I say HSP, that's just the abbreviation for highly sensitive person. So I'll use those interchangeably throughout this entire video and probably throughout my entire channel. But yes, there's a million ways to know if you are highly sensitive. And let's not forget, if you watched my other video, high sensitivity is a spectrum, so that means you may experience some of these things and not all of them, and that is totally fine. The biggest thing about being highly sensitive is just knowing yourself and what feels true to you, okay? So if you like this video and this channel, please go and subscribe down below, leave any comments, questions, all that good stuff. If you are new here, welcome. It is so nice to have you. I'm so excited to get into today's topic. And before we do that, I just want to say thank you so very much for being here, and I am so excited to have you. So let's jump right in, okay? The first sign about highly sensitive people is they have an extreme aversion to violence or cruelty or things that are scary. Most highly sensitive people, because of their finely attuned nervous systems, are also geared towards the brain, so the part in our brain that lights up for empathy and emotion. Highly sensitive people are really active in those parts of the brains, which means they can feel a lot of what's going on. They don't just see it, right, or hear it, they feel it within their entire bodies. So if you strongly dislike watching the news, if you strongly dislike scary movies, or if you don't like watching violent TV shows or movies, things like that, that could mean that you're highly sensitive. If you have a hard time watching, like a parent discipline their child or just anything like that, it's because there is a strong tie to the highly sensitive person's nervous system and empathy in the brain. And so this makes us extremely susceptible to feeling a lot of emotion that comes through when we experience these things that are scary or violent or cruel. So for me, I can think of a time, actually, I was driving through Colorado with a friend of mine, and we were just driving through the mountains, and the past year there had been a wildfire. And so like all along the mountain, there was just tree after tree after tree after tree. And this isn't even an animal or a person, these were trees, right? And they were just bare and scorched, and they didn't have any leaves. Some of them had, like, the trunks had fallen over, but it was like just a boneyard of trees. And I remember just feeling so sad, and like just I could feel the pain of like the fire and the demolition that happened with that and the destruction, and that really, really got to me. Also, I will tend to if I see any animals on the side of the road that have been hit, I will also tend to, make a small prayer that like their soul or their spirit goes where it needs to go. So if you're driving in the car with me, you'll oftentimes see me like close my eyes very quickly. Even if it's a squirrel or a bird, I'll close my eyes and I'll just, pray that their soul is going where it needs to go. So if you are a highly sensitive person, you may feel very strongly to these different types of elements, whether that be fear or violence or cruelty. Number 2, So the second sign that you may be highly sensitive is when we are dealing with time constraints, right? So being highly sensitive, most of us hate feeling rushed. When we feel rushed, it's like the whole world is just like jumbled. And a lot of this actually also relates to time pressure. Why? Why do we feel this way? Why do we get all bent out of shape about feeling rushed? So actually what happens is highly sensitive people typically tend to immerse themselves really fully into their environment because their senses are so vastly like watching everything around them. They tend to, when they're working on something, put themselves like fully in that environment, you know, like that is their environment, whether that be a computer game or a piece of music or whatever work they're working on at that time. If they're interacting with a person, like their full attention is on that subject. So what ends up happening for the highly sensitive person, I feel for you guys and myself in this scenario because I'm so guilty of it, is we tend to have a detail fixation, especially when we're working on projects or, you know, like art projects or work projects, things like that. We have a detail fixation because we're so attuned to every small little thing. We tend to hyper focus in on one thing. So I actually had this friend, dear friend of mine. She was an amazing copywriter, and she also is an amazing graphic designer. And oftentimes, what would happen for her is as she was creating this beautiful work of art, she would spend, 35 minutes on like one tiny little piece of a letter, and then, 2 hours would go by and like the rest of the project isn't done. And I'm definitely guilty of this. I took a lot of art courses, and let me tell you, half of my artwork never gets finished because I'm so hyper focused on one thing. So because the HSPs are like this, what ends up happening is our time perception is actually different than most people's time perception. So because we hyper-focus on details, other people are just moving along at a regular pace, and we're over here like, oh, let me just get this little thing right, and then we fall behind. So that can be very disruptive to the HSP, but that's also why HSPs tend to feel really overwhelmed or wigged out when there's a lot of time pressure, is because we really like to fully immerse ourselves in everything that we do. Number 3, so the third sign of an HSP is needing alone time or beginning to withdraw from people. So why is this? Why does it seem like HSPs need so much alone time? Or why is it that 2 hours into the party, they're like, all right, let's go, I'm ready. So because HSPs have this really hypersensitive nervous system, what actually happens is they're taking in stimulus and also people's thoughts, feelings, emotions. So like we mentioned in the first one, highly sensitive people, the area in their brain that's connected to empathy and emotion is lit up, per se, a little more than the average person. So when highly sensitive people spend a lot of their time around people, what ends up happening is they absorb all of that. So absorbing all of that on a constant day, and it's not something that a highly sensitive person can turn off. So that's the thing, right? Is it's a constant influx of stimulus. So that causes the highly sensitive person a lot of times to become very overwhelmed, either emotionally or physically. It can be, like a mental emotional discomfort, or it can also be a physical discomfort. It's very common for highly sensitive people to feel things in their body. Very common for stomach aches, very common for headaches, all of those things. So the reason why highly sensitive people have to have so much alone time and tend to withdraw from people is so that they can soothe their nervous system, okay? So what they need is they need quiet, they need calm environments. The majority of an HSP's existence is spent calming the nervous system and feeling safe, which doesn't always happen when we're in, a really crowded environment or around a lot of noise or a lot of really high energy people. Okay, so the fourth way, the fourth sign to tell if you are an HSP is so many HSPs are truly, truly moved by beauty. So this can be so, so simple. And this is the beautiful thing about HSPs in general as well, is so highly sensitive people find beauty in really simple moments. And I'll tell you why. So the reason because when they're taking in information, they are so hyper focused, or their ability to expand a moment or a experience is, a lot more intense than maybe the average population. So if you find yourself crying at beautiful commercials, or you listen to a song and you just feel it in your entire body, you might be an HSP. So as I'm saying this, HSPs are the ones that see the way a light hits a leaf and they just are in awe at that beauty. It can be really simple moments, but because highly sensitive people have such a tuned in and sensitized nervous system, they're able to take in more pleasure as well. So this is a really cool thing. And I just want to mention very quickly, if you are an HSP and you are super moved by beauty and art and music, I have created a playlist just for you. It is down in the description box below. I have handpicked every song that's in there, and what it is meant for is the songs in there are meant to soothe the nervous system but also nourish the soul. So it's completely free. So if you are looking for some new music or just want to check out what songs are actually like emotionally good for highly sensitive people, check it out. It's down below. And number 5. So one of the last common signs here that we have for you today of being an HSP is, yes, you guessed it, clothing. Clothing is very important for highly sensitive people because basically what the clothing is it's a sensation, okay? So as we're taking in this stimulus, we can feel everything. Like, okay, if you're a HSP, you're gonna be able to relate to me on this one. Have you ever kissed somebody who had a scratchy face? And think about what that felt like. Did it like give you shivers over your entire body? Or did you have to like adjust to it for 1 second before you're like, okay, let me feel that and then let me adjust, and now like I can process it. But same thing. So my big thing used to be tags. Like, oh my gosh, tags on the back of the shirt, if they're scratchy, I remember being in class, like, in middle school and high school, and if I had a scratchy tag on my shirt, I literally couldn't focus in school. I couldn't get my work done because it's like literally like all that you're thinking about. So the reason why is because there's such a body awareness with highly sensitive people, right? So because highly sensitive people generally when they're out in public are very alert and on edge, it means that they're picking up every little thing. So highly sensitive people tend to really like to have very comforting clothing. A lot of times, this isn't necessarily true for me, but I have heard a lot of highly sensitive people say that they don't like clothing that feels really restrictive. And I used to actually work as a hairstylist, so I was always moving and stuff like that. And I could totally see where if you're a highly sensitive person, I always say that I'm always more comfortable in less. So if I could just walk around naked all the time, that would be my ideal situation, because then you don't even feel anything, right? You don't feel anything pulling on your skin. Highly sensitive people tend to really take attention to detail when picking out their clothing. And usually comfort or soft fabrics tend to be like the way to go with that. So there you have it, guys. That was my 5 common signs of HSPs. Now remember, there are so many different signs to tell if you're an HSP that I did not mention here. So if you want to do more research, you honestly can just Google and see what all the signs are. And again, keep in mind, high sensitivity is a spectrum. So not everybody is going to feel the same about the same types of triggers or stimuluses because it is a spectrum. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. And we will catch you next time. Big love, Serena.